be able to see. If you can see 20/20, that's great, but say you don't have the proper muscle functioning to be able to like move from one word to the next when you're reading, then you do have 20/20 vision, but it's not perfect because you can't read properly because your muscles aren't functioning properly. So it's just like, I guess I just wanted to stick that in there so that you guys are aware. Being 20/20 is like a good starting point, but it doesn't indicate that everything about your eyes is perfect.
So for all you music lovers out there, Drake and who's the other person? Drake and Justin Timberlake are lying to you. 20/20 is not perfect vision.
Okay, and then I'll move on to the next one. The next one is that optometrists are not real doctors.
If anybody says false true this, you need to be out of this club.
And that one's of course false. I don't even know why people say that. I feel like people do that just to like piss you off for whatever reason. But I mean, it's false. Like, we are doctors of optometry. So if anyone ever says that to you, I don't know what to tell you, but because people sometimes say that, like, even I've had that interaction with patients before where they're like, you can't call yourself doctor. And I'm like, but like, get out of my chair. Like, what are you doing here? And why are you saying that to me?
And just to, ease it up as well too, it doesn't happen very often. It's a very rare comment. It does happen here and there, but it's a very, very rare comment. I think our profession has built a huge fountain of respect, especially in this province in Alberta, where it is the widest scope of practice in all of Canada is in Alberta for optometrists. And we are pushing for even more. I'll leave it at that.
Okay, and then the next one is that optometrists only give glasses as prescriptions. Like, that's our only job. And then that one is, of course, false as well. So it kind of leads us into the next slide. So I'll just move on and talk about why it's false in the next slide. So this one's a little bit more about what we do as optometrists. So of course, prescribing glasses and contact lenses is a huge part of what we do. It's important to get people to see 20/20 if they're capable of that. And then we're also primary care providers as far as the eyes go. So any ocular conditions like cataracts, glaucoma, macular degeneration, those are some big ones. Also lazy eye, dry eye, we manage, diagnose, we treat those things. Do you have anything else to say about that?
Yeah, I think the easiest, and this is something that once someone told me, and I think it's 120% true, is the number one way to look at what an optometrist is in the whole eye care world, which we're going to touch on in a little bit as well later on, is that, think of it this way, an optometrist is like your primary regular GP doctor, your general physician for the eyes. So when someone has a problem, they're typically going to go to their family doctor and say, hey, like my throat is acting up, I don't feel good. Then the family doctor will manage and treat smaller conditions in-house, but if it's a bigger deal, they will then refer them to a specialist in that nature. If someone has a skin condition, they go to the primary doctor, hey, I have a really bad rash on my cheek, I don't know what's going on. If it's a minor condition, they'll give them a medication like hydrocortisone to help calm things down. But if it still is not reacting well, or if it seems to be something suspicious, they'll then refer them to a dermatologist. So optometrists are very much the exact same thing, but for the eyes. So if someone has an eye issue, they will come see an optometrist first. We will then manage and treat and diagnose small kind of conditions and infections and inflammations and obviously things like Dr. Gill said. But then if things are getting to advanced stages or something is a little bit of an emergency, we will then refer out to the appropriate specialty for eyes and ophthalmology for that purpose. So I think the best way to look at us is the GP of the eye world is what we are essentially. So yes, of course, getting people to see is 100% our primary objective, but managing and treating disease is something that before going into it, I knew it played a role to some extent, but you do not realize how many things are caught by looking at the eyes in terms of your health. That leads us perfectly to the next thing.
Yeah, that was a great transition to the next point, because people often say like, oh, eyes are the window to the soul. I'm sure you guys have heard that.
Or eyes are the window to your health.
Yeah, I would say eyes are the window to the health is like a really accurate statement. So these are some of the conditions that you can catch by just looking at people's eyes. And some of them are huge. Like the biggest ones are often diabetes, high blood pressure. People who are diagnosed with diabetes are actually usually referred by their primary doctor, whoever manages diabetes, to see optometrists, because we have a really easy view basically into what the blood vessels look like. When you're looking in the back of the eye, you don't have to cut anyone open. You have access to like what the blood vessels look like. You have access to what a nerve looks like, and you can see their tissue, and it's all non-invasive. You're literally just using a light and a lens. So it's really easy to tell what their diabetes looks like. So if it's poorly managed, you'd be able to see that. And usually if there's bleeding or like issues in the back of the eye, you can extrapolate and assume that there's issues going on elsewhere in their body as well. So,
and I'll point in fun fact for you to share with your friends and family in the future. Jasmine touched on it, but just in a clear sentence, simple sentence. The eye is the only place in the entire body that you can see internal blood vessels without having to cut you open. And no word to lie, the funnest thing I do, and this is a little bit nerd in us, we're all a little bit nerds here, so a little nerd in us is when I take a look on the inside of the eye and I see that vein pulsing like this, you almost have to pause to blind the patient a little bit more so you can enjoy it. And that's got to be one of the coolest things that we do. And you can even see individual red blood cells flowing through the blood vessel on the eye. And that is another moment when you blind the patient for your own nerd enjoyment.
And there's like a ton more. So some of these, of course, are going to be more common than others. Diabetes and high blood pressures are really big ones. Of course, you see those probably more commonly. And then there's other ones like life-threatening conditions, for example, tumors, those types of things like you can catch as well. So it's really important to think of your job as something that's really important. You could save someone's life like in a regular day of your work. And it's really cool.
I think we can both agree that we know people that have saved someone's life by getting their eyes checked.
Yeah.
From a episode where their high blood pressure was at a point where they need to go to the ER and get medication immediately. But I want everyone to shake their head yes or no if you knew that via the eyes you could detect conditions like we have listed here.
I think a lot of people have their cameras on.
Okay, I guess a lot of people have their cameras on, but whoever has a camera on. So.
Okay, we'll move on to the next one. Okay, and this one just kind of elaborates a little bit more about like, we talked about what an optometrist does, but there's also opticians and ophthalmologists. So do you want to just like explain the differences?
Yeah, so has anyone heard of I'm sure everyone's heard of the 3 O's as they call them, optician, optometrist, and ophthalmologist. And I kind of, like I said, kind of jumped the gun a little bit on this one here, what an optometrist is. So again, easiest way to think of us is we are your GPs of the eye world. Everyone comes to us to take a look at things. If something's bothering them, all that kind of stuff, then we will then manage, treat, or refer as a need basis. So think of us as like the GPs of the eye world. So now think of your ophthalmologist as the people that you will refer to as your specialists in your certain category, your dermatologist, your cardiologist, your, anesthesiologist, you don't refer to anesthesiologists, but point being, your specialty kind of driven individuals, your ophthalmologists are going to be the ones that are going to handle advanced cases of disease, advanced cases of emergencies, and kind of deal with cataract surgery, retinal surgeries, pediatric surgeries, everything of that nature. They're the people that you are going to refer to. And honestly, the relationship between optometrists and ophthalmologists in this province is fantastic. We have a great relationship with them. Generally speaking, most of them will want to work with you. And when you send patients to them, they'll send them right back to you. And it's a great relationship we have. And that's what has allowed Alberta to be the leading provider for optometry in the entire country as well. Optometrists, and I'll jump back for the optometrists, obviously we told you our journey, that's kind of how it goes. You do an undergraduate degree followed by a doctor of optometry degree with an optional 1-year residency program. That is is very common in the States for people to do residency, much less common in Canada, but I'm sure that's going to continue to change as time goes on. To become an ophthalmologist, you have to do an undergraduate degree in most cases, then followed by going to medical school for 4 years. And that's also followed then by a ophthalmology residency, which is about 4 years as well. And that can also be, if you want to specialize beyond that as a retina glaucoma specialist, followed by a up to 4-year fellowship as well. So it can get pretty long, but at the end of the day, if you love what you do, no time is too long for what you do in that sense there.
And it's also important to remember, because sometimes I feel like people ask me this on a regular basis, like, can you become an optometrist and then switch once you're an optometrist and like specialize somehow to be an ophthalmologist? And that answer is no. Like, you would have to go back through med school and then do like the whole journey to become an ophthalmologist. It's not like transferable. Like, once you're an optometrist, now you can just like be an ophthalmologist with like a few extra years of training. That's like not how it works.
And then with that being said, you can specialize in our practice as optometry as well too. There's many clinics here that are specialized in vision therapy, which is kind of like physiotherapy, but for the eyes. They're specialized in dry eye treatment. There's clinics that are specialized in pediatric treatment. There's clinics that are specialized, in advanced medical clinics for seniors and that kind of stuff. And optometrists can also work at an ophthalmologist's office, and they co-manage a lot of things together as well, which is a little bit more of a disease-emphasized career option. But that's what I love about our profession. You have so many avenues of where you can go and where your career can go that it's literally endless. And that's what's so amazing about it. But before I continue to get off track, the final thing I'll say is what an optician is as well. An optician is the third O, and they're primarily going to be responsible for we hand them the prescription. They're responsible for fitting, aligning, doing measurements, and kind of getting our patients set up with glasses and contacts so then they can see correctly and properly, because without an appropriately measured pair of glasses, our prescription could be absolutely nailed on to the T. But if those measurements are not done correctly, they will blame us saying we can't see correctly, but it comes down to the opticians making sure they're perfect, and they have, again, a great relationship with us as well too.
And then I guess we'll just talk about what made us interested in optometry in the first place. Mine, I actually started being interested in optometry in like the 8th grade. We were doing a health project where we're supposed to pick a profession and like do a whole report about like what that profession does. I just happened to come back from the optometrist like maybe a few days prior to that assignment being handed out, and I was like, fine, I'll just do it on optometry. But the more I kind of started doing the research, I learned that it's a really great profession. There's a lot of women in the profession. It works really good for like work-life balance. And then like Shaminder said, you can take it in so many different ways. So it's just so diverse and it's exciting. Like you're on your feet, you're thinking, you're using your brain every single day of your life. It's awesome. And I really like the sciences. So it was kind of natural for me to like take that path in life as well.
And then this is going to lead us to kind of like, we're going to jump back to our journey. That's going to lead us to the application process, which a lot of you guys are probably going to get close to here. For me, I actually originally wanted to be a dentist my entire life. I got braces. It really changed my entire life at that point. And then I did a volunteer service at a dental office, and I absolutely hated it. I hated it. My dentist told me not to be a dentist either. So I was like, okay, well, that's telling me enough. And then I didn't know what I wanted to do for a while. And then, so I'm a very talkative individual. I'm a very positive individual. And when I came across optometry as a second volunteer kind of thing I did for my biomedical program in high school, it was perfect, because in dentistry, if I wanted to talk to somebody, everyone's been to the dentist and they're asking you questions. You're like, right? Like, you can't have a full-on conversation, and I am a chatterbox, and I want to have conversations, build relations with my patients, and this seemed like the perfect place where no one's really too terrified to come to the eye doctor, and you get the ability to help someone with something they're super, the first thing you do when you wake up is open your eyes, and vision is so important, and we take it for granted every single day, including myself. With that being said, to help people see, and the smile you put on kids' faces sometimes when they're seeing for the first time, you all see those videos on social media, the kids ones, and even parents and grandparents when they struggle and they're like, oh my gosh, I've never seen this clear before, or thank you so much for helping me get out of my dry eye that I've been fighting for the last 10 years. Those moments are priceless and make you love everything you do in a sense. And I think the last thing I'll add to the why I started to apply for optometry school was the diversity. I almost went to ask for School of Business at a U of M, but I didn't feel like I was doing myself justice for being in a people-friendly environment. And optometry, we said, is diverse because I started my own business. And with that being said, you have the ability to venture in different directions. And same with Dr. Gill with her business as well too, that you can do different things, but still be helping people at the same time. And that's the priceless thing about it. And that led me to say, you know what, I'm applying to optometry.
Okay, and then let's talk about the application process, because I feel like this is super relevant to a lot of you guys.
I'll ask if Lucy, maybe is there multiple people here applying to optometry school in the next year or so? Okay. Okay. All right. This will be your important part here.
So I guess I'll just talk you through like kind of what my experience was like. I'm not sure how different things are now, but when I started, I was in my I knew I wanted to be an optometrist for a long time, of course, but when I was in undergrad, I just kind of like let the years go by, and at some point in I was supposed to take the OAT between my second and third year, like during the summer, because I was like, I'll take it off, I'll study, it'll be great. But the whole summer passed and I did not take the OAT. And then in the beginning of my third year, I was like, hey, like if I really want to be an optometrist, I obviously need to start, like collecting, get myself together basically to like submit an application at some point. So I got the Kaplan prep course, and that's when I started studying for the OAT. I basically just used the Kaplan course. I didn't really use any like extra materials or like open any of my courses outside of that. Like you could if you wanted to, but I feel like the course covers everything pretty thoroughly and like it prepares you very well for what's on the test. So even after taking it, I don't feel that I would have done any better if I had like looked to outside sources and like used my own notes from different classes and stuff like that. During the OAT studying process, I also started looking at what are the applications like. And there's like a central system, I think Optomcast. That's where you like upload, I think they get your OAT scores, you like upload your applications and stuff, like your personal information, all that kind of stuff on there. But there's also some like extra applications from different schools. So like depending on which schools you want to apply to, they might have like essay questions that they want you to submit, stuff like that. You also have to get like a certain amount of shadowing, I believe. So this sounds like a lot. It is a lot all at the same time to be like studying for the OAT and trying to get your shadowing hours and trying to do your applications. I won't lie, it's like stressful, but it's doable. And like, I'm sure some of these guys, like Lucy for sure, would be able to give you guys like her advice on like how to manage all of those things. And then once you get your applications together, at some point you're going to submit them, and then you'll be moving on to interviews. So I feel like this is really the key part of the application process. Interviews is it's going to be super important because up until then you've proved like your academic capability. Interviews is really where you can like let your personality and like your extracurriculars shine. And
for interviews, my number one advice for everyone leading up to the interview is I use everything on the Student Doctor Network, I believe it's called, .net. Is that still a website? StudentDoctorNetwork.net. And there's an optometry forums on there. And you can literally find every question that whatever school you're applying to is going to ask you. And take those questions and make a 5 to 7 minute long answer to every single question. Write it out, talk it over and over and over again till you literally say, I could answer this question in my sleep. It's student.doctor.net, and there's the optometry forum for the interviews, and every single school has different style of questions for the interviews, but that had a question after the interview was done. I was like, I feel like I did the interview once already before, because obviously there's going to be some variations, and it's not going to be, perfect, and some will be a little bit different, but they do a fantastic job of giving you the general idea of what to expect, what questions to expect. So that way, when the question comes your way, you're very prepared as well. I agree. I think I had I can't even remember how many pages. It was like several pages long. And naturally, I feel I'm definitely more of like an introvert. It definitely scared me to have to do an interview like one-on-one, sometimes like one versus like 3 or 4 different people in a room. And I didn't know if I was going to be able to like chat long enough to like have a good interview with someone. So I felt that it was really worthwhile to like go through and prepare my answers ahead of time so that you're just not as nervous. Like it really takes the nerves away. And final 2 points we'll make about interviews, because it is a critical part for everybody here, is this is something I did not do in my interview, but now being beyond school and everything, is when they ask you the question, and this is something I just learned, acknowledge the question before you start talking. So my favorite way of saying is, that's a great question. And just saying that makes them feel like you're listening the whole time and not being jittery, and honestly calms you down a little bit because it gives you a second to breathe before you start speaking. And it also lets you kind of almost mentally think and get the gears rolling before you start saying your answer. And so you don't stutter over your words or start jumbling your words and then feel like, oh man, I'm ruining this. So just take a deep breath when they ask a question. That's a great question. Steal it from me, use it. I don't care if everyone uses the same thing and they're like, why did all these Alberta kids saying that same thing? Go ahead and use that thing. Just reply back to saying that's a great question. And it really helps calm you down for a second and give you a second to breathe. And also for the interview as well, to just be yourself. Honestly, at the end of the day, they're human just like you are. And yes, you feel like they have a position of power. Yeah, they kind of do. But at the same time, so do you, because as much as they're interviewing you, you're interviewing them about the school as well too. Jasmine, any other comments about interviews?
I think it's important to remember, and like often it's easy to forget that they want you at the school. So like Shaminder said, like you are interviewing them because you have your pick. So ask them questions back. That's a really key thing. I feel like sometimes people forget.
Number one.
They're literally looking for it. It's like a part. I used to work in admissions at ICO for like one of my work studies, and they want students who ask them a question back. Like you could even ask them about like their boards, passing rates. How do you prep your students to pass boards? Something like that, like anything. And it like puts them, like make them put a sticker on your application, like, hey, I like that one because she asked a question or he asked a question. And it's like crazy.
My recommendation is have 3 questions ready to go and have them in 3 different variable places. So for example, I know my question, I had one question regarding the clinical experience. So I said, because they will ask you, do you have any questions for me? And if you say no, they're gonna think you're unprepared. So make sure you have 3 questions ready to go. And one question I asked was about clinic. So for example, how is at what time do students get to get clinical experience? And is there some clinical experience in the first year? What would that be? Another question I asked was then about the academic side of things. For example, how do you guys help students manage stress levels in the first year when you're going through 3 exams every single week, plus assignments, plus lab reports, plus practicals, plus class, plus lectures, plus, not to scare you guys, there's more, but all that in 1 week. How do you help students manage stress? And then the third one, which I personally think is important to say, is what kind of clubs and events do you guys throw to help students get experience in networking at this school? Because networking is the best thing in the world.
I feel like networking is a golden word. They like love that word.
Yeah, so say networking.
And then after interviews, eventually you'll get to the point where you get to pick your school. And then this is kind of personal. I mean, it'll be based on like what your experience is, but really there's not going to be any decision that you make where you'll be upset with it in the end. Like most people don't have anything bad to say about their school when they're done and out of optometry school. And then you get prepared to move because you will definitely not be staying in Edmonton. Oh, and then my last thing is like a little bit of advice for you guys that I wish that I took. I guess I had this advice at the time. I just wasn't listening. But research sooner rather than later. Like don't wait until you're like in your 4th year and then you're like, hey, like let's figure this out now, because you're going to be on a much tighter time schedule depending on when you want to get into school. Like say you're planning on finishing your undergrad and then immediately applying for optometry school. I'd say like your 3rd year-ish, maybe even sooner than that if you want to, like to just start looking into what the process looks like. I know a lot of Canadian students like to apply to Waterloo, and I definitely shot myself in the foot because I took my OAT, I think like December of my 3rd year. So I was actually too late to even apply to Waterloo. Like that wasn't an option for me because I started it too late. So like do your research and like be prepared ahead of time, especially if you know you want to go to Waterloo, because their cycle is sooner than all of the American schools.
Correct. Agreed with all of that.
Okay. And then we went to ICO, both of us, and we
the
love ICO.
Best school out there. I'm telling you, it's the best.
It's not sponsored. We just loved it. So we picked ICO. I'll go over like some of the more general things. ICO is a super reputable school. It has really good boards passing rates. Boards are basically these like standardized tests that you take in your 3rd year to make sure that you've like learned enough knowledge to go be an optometrist. They're very difficult, and boards passing rates are going to be super important when you're looking to like pick your schools.
It is also the oldest school in North America, and it has the largest alumni base. It has over 20% of all practicing ODs in North America graduated from ICO. That's 1/5.
And it's located in Chicago. And Chicago is a really beautiful city. I feel like that was a big thing for me when I was picking. I wanted to be somewhere, if I'm leaving Edmonton, I want to have a good time. And Chicago was a great city to pick. And then it also has a really good clinical training program. I feel like this is super key. I have 0 regrets about picking this school in specific because of the education that I got. and especially like the clinical skills that you get. So you get into clinic and start seeing patients, not alone, but you'll be like with other students who are like older than you. Like you, in your first year, they pair you, I think, with a third year, right?
Correct.
Yeah, but you get in there right away and you start seeing patients right away. So just having that exposure and experience from first year all the way through fourth year, and it builds, you just become so much more comfortable. And there's, sorry?
I was going to say, I'm not naming other schools, but other schools don't start clinical experience until third year, which I think is absolutely ridiculous.
It's a disadvantage.
You are so disadvantaged if you start your clinical experience in third year. You guys can do research and figure out which ones those are, but.
And then there's a super diverse patient base because our clinic at ICO, it's attached to the school, but the school is like slightly towards the south side of Chicago. So there's a lot of different diseases that like will walk into your chair on a regular basis.
And we're talking people who have an eye exam for 20 plus years come in and say they can't see, yet no glasses or contacts are going to fix their vision because they have a hole in the back of their eye.
And it's often like a combination of things. So you get really, I mean, if you spend 4 years in clinic there, you get really comfortable with a lot of different diseases. And I'd say, obviously, that's something really important to have under your belt when you get out of school, because those things will walk into your chair. And often if it's the first time that you're seeing something outside of like your notes, like, oh, I saw this in my notes, but I've never seen a patient like that. It's a lot more difficult and nerve-wracking versus if you've actually seen it in patient care during school, and then you get out and see it in person and you're like, hey, I know exactly what to do because I've done this before. And then the last reason for ICO, not the last, but like the last one I have as a bullet point, is that it doesn't promote partying, but there's definitely like a very fun vibe at the school. There's tons of events. They always want their students to get together. It's like work hard, play hard. Like that's truly ICO, and I love it. I feel like it makes you so close to the people that you're at school. You get to meet so many people, and I don't know, it's so fun.
You develop a bond and family with your classmates, and I'm sure every school to some extent this happens. ICO is unique in the sense that it's just a school on its own. There is no other undergrad programs there. There is no other graduate programs there. So you are the primary focus from everybody from top to bottom. And yes, I was also part of the application process as a second year student, and when you're applying for that job, quote unquote, do not make ICO seem like a party school. However, there's no other way to say it. ICO is a party school. So
it does not mean we don't have education.
It is very much a work hard, but they will make you bust your butt and hate your life Monday through Friday. But Friday night, you are taking time off. You're going to explore the city. You're going to go out and have a good time. And they have so many fun events at school that they host. It is the best. And it's always free food drinks at every single event.
Okay, and then we'll answer like some of the questions that Lucy sent us. So what was the toughest year of optometry? I would say for me, first year for sure. I think for a lot of people, if you ask, they'll probably say their first year. And that's just because you have like it's just a huge shock to your system to like jump between undergrad and graduate school. I would say for most people, it's like a lot more exams on something. But for me, I feel like I got to, I was like, hey, hard over, and like, now I just need to pass. Like that was mentality in first year, is that I just needed to pass. So I spent a lot of time like being social, which was really great because I never really did undergrad, but it made me lose focus about like what I was actually there for a little bit. So then I had to get myself together.
And I can second that as well too. First year is always going to be the hardest.
You have to find a balance.
Honestly, undergraduate and graduate school are two different animals. Undergraduate, you have 2-3 lectures a day plus a lab in the afternoon, something like that, approximately. At ICO in first year, every single day feels very long, but a week goes by so fast. And the reason I say that is because you wake up and in the morning and you say, here we go again. You wake up, you go get breakfast, you have labs from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. You have lunch from 1 to 2, from 9 to 12, lunch from 12 to 1, then you have labs from 1 to 5, then you go get dinner, and then be up all night studying till midnight or later because you have exam Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Then you go again, you have another exam Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And then you have assignments in between. And then you have, like I said, the things before. It's a lot, and they kind of hold back a little bit. But don't be alarmed, don't be scared. It's the duty of everyone's doing the exact thing together. So you all go through the pain, all together, and you all move forward together. And it's an absolutely enjoyable experience. It's not something you'll never forget. And I think as well as too is second, you just get used to it and get better at handling it. That's
It's
really
a
what it
balance,
is.
right? Like you just get more comfortable with what your routine is like, and then everything falls into place a little bit by the time you get to second year. Even towards like, the end of first year, I feel a little more comfortable. But now we'll hit you guys with some highlights because that made it sound like it was a miserable experience, which it wasn't. My highlights, I feel, were meeting my roommates and friends, and then also meeting your husband.
Yeah.
It's like such a community at school. So like the people that I met was roommates with, and then we like lived together outside of school as well for a little bit. They just become family because obviously I'm from Edmonton, so my whole family is here. My friend base was here. You have to almost start over when you get to school, but it really feels like you're like living with like a second family almost. And I feel like that's really the biggest takeaway for me as well, is that I have such close friends that came out of those 4 years.
And I can pretty much echo everything Jasmine says as well too. And just the experience of being somewhere else, and it really helps you grow as a human as well. So they have so much in those 4 years. And the clinical rotations. I got a chance to spend 3 months in LA. I got a chance to spend 3 months in New York. I got a chance to spend 6 months in Chicago. So those kind of opportunities don't always happen on a regular basis. You have to take advantage of where you are. Especially, I think we learned in the pandemic that nothing is ever promised. So do what you can to do that as well.
And then the next one, anything that you wish you did differently?
So one of you guys' questions was anything that I wish I did differently. This is my only kind of thing, and I definitely was more into it for sure towards the end of my time, is begin networking right away. The school puts you in a position to meet individuals in your career path from day one that you get there. Take advantage of it. Go to the meetings, go to the events, and network from day one. I got my opportunity to be in a private practice partnership because of someone I met at ICO during a second year, during the practice symposium, in which alumni come, and I wouldn't be here without that if I didn't go network that day and continue to network beyond that. So you don't know what connections will do for you. So always network from day one and talk, and don't be afraid to meet or email anybody, including myself and Jasmine, of course.
And then we'll talk a little bit about what it's like to move from Canada to America. So I would say one of the biggest difficulties associated with moving to America would be healthcare, because we're so used to universal healthcare here. You definitely have to look into getting like traveler's insurance is what I ended up getting. And it works out really well. They kind of cover you for the most part what you need. And I would definitely not skip getting healthcare, like traveler's insurance, especially because just from like how rigorous the courses are, especially when you first get there, I found myself being sick a little bit more than like I was used to. I think that's just from like the stress and stuff like that. So you don't want to be like hit with the bills of that.
I did go to the hospital when I was there once. I was playing intramural sports and I sprained my ankle. I thought I broke it. So without my insurance, that foot of that bill would have been $10,000. So thankfully I didn't have to.
And then right. How do we go back?
There you go. Go ahead.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. And the finances. So I feel like that's another really big one because optometry school is going to be crazy expensive, especially if you go to the States. Yeah, you made it to that. Especially if you go to the States. But I feel like my biggest piece of advice as far as that goes is not to stress about it, because once you're out of school, it doesn't feel like as big of a deal. You definitely have to take out loans. Like me and Schminder collectively, I feel like I don't want to tell you, I'm not going to tell you guys a number, it's just astronomical number between us, what our loans are like. But you pay them back. I mean, optometry is a really great, stable profession. Time, of course, but it's definitely not something that I worry about on a regular basis now. It was just back then, it seemed like such a big deal, like, oh, this is going to be so expensive. Take out the loans and then kind of, I guess, figure or worry about it once you're out of school. And even once you're out of school, I feel like it's really like, it'll get paid back eventually. And I guess that's just like the thought that I keep in my head, is that I'm going to get there eventually. And I don't let it like ruin day-to-day life or anything like that.
At the end of the day, obviously work hard, manage it correctly, and be fortunate to live in Alberta, because Alberta gives nearly quadruple what Manitoba gave me. So
Like the student loans.
it's unreal. So be thankful for that.
And then, well, I guess we'll move on to the graduation part. So I just put some photos. Actually, before I move on, this photo of ICO right here is, I took it when I was leaving school in like 2019. I was going to go on my externship, so I was leaving ICO, and I was like, this is the last time I'll be at ICO before I come back for graduation. And I actually have never been back. So that was my last time at ICO ever. And then we'll move on to graduation. So this is a picture from Shaminder's graduation in 2019, and then my graduation in 2020. And I feel like just the photos will like give you, there's like a difference in the vibes of the two photos. And the reason is I graduated during a pandemic. So what was it like graduating during COVID? I feel like if you ask any 2020 graduate, whether it was like a high school grad or an undergrad graduation, or in my case, like a grad school graduation, it was devastating. Still, sometimes I think about it and I'm like kind of bitter about it, but I mean, I moved on. It meant that we couldn't graduate at school. We had like an online graduation ceremony. So we just attended, like this photo was taken in the backyard of my house with my parents, and it was definitely different than Shaminder's. I was at Shaminder's, and the school does a wonderful job of like doing a graduation ceremony. It's unfortunate that we didn't get one in 2020.
And I won't talk about my graduation because we'll leave it at that.
It's better than mine. And then did it impact my job search? So I graduated, of course, like May 2020, which definitely like right in the middle of COVID. I started looking for jobs in January before I graduated, which I feel like is a good timeline. I was definitely able to like line up a few things for myself. And then I was going through processes of like interviewing, but then once everything shut down, I think it was in like February, right? March, something like that. I got a lot of emails from people being like, we just don't know what the future is going to hold. So unfortunately, not going to be able to like offer a position anymore. They just like took their positions away. So it kind of left me like high and dry. I was like, what am I going to do? Thankfully, just in persistent communication with people, like I would check back every once in a while. I'd be like, okay, like any changes, or are you willing to like put out your job posting again, or you know, stuff like that. I was just like really persistent. I emailed a ton of people all the time, and I was able to find
I think the point Jasmine is making there is it all comes down to networking again. Just don't be afraid to shoot an email to somebody that you met at an event, and just email them every single quarter. Just say, hey, we just finished our quarter of school, had a great time, I'm heading home, can we grab coffee? You know, can I come by your office and say hi? And it's because of Jasmine's persistency during the pandemic of, even though they said we're not offering a job right now, just checking in and saying, hi, how are you? I hope things well. That allowed her to then get her position.
Mm-hmm. And I definitely had a part-time position, but it wasn't full-time. And then I started looking for more part-time work to build a full schedule, which was kind of how it was for me for almost the whole first year that I was out of school. And then just recently I got my first full-time position at Bailey Nelson, which is where I'm at right now. So the path was not like a very straight line. It was definitely up and down, but you just got to keep trying. And in doing those part-time positions, I definitely found stuff that I was like, okay, I really like this about this job, or I don't like this about this job. And you just kind of learn more about like what you actually yourself in the next step of your life. So it wasn't wasted time. You're just like spending some time and growing.
And I'll just make a quick point is that it's not abnormal to have multiple part-time positions in our field, and to make a full-time schedule. It's actually very common, more likely. I was very fortunate that I was given a full-time position during my fourth year, so I wasn't even graduated yet. And then again, I got my full-time obviously practice ownership here again right away. So it's not that it's impossible to get a full-time position right away. You can. It's just more likely to do that you did.
And then one of the questions is, why did we come back to Alberta? So that's a really great question. I feel like Shaminder touched on this a little bit before. It's just like a huge scope of practice. You can take it.
Yeah, Alberta, like I said, Alberta is leading province in optometry. We asked for advanced scope to do lasers and minor surgical procedures as well, and that's all stuff that is we're going to take the first step on everywhere in the country. Alberta currently has the best kind of billing rates compared to other provinces. That might change with all the government health cuts, of course, but it's still the leading profession in terms of things we can do, things we can kind of enjoy. It's by far the leading profession. I think a part of us is, she's based in Alberta, and it made sense for us with the opportunities that came up there. And there's plenty of job opportunities. Is a market saturated? Is this and that? No. There's always new job postings, like every day. There's tons of options. You might not be in the place you want to be right away, but that doesn't mean you can't get there. And there's so many opportunities in this province ultimately.
And right now, what I'm hearing a lot too is, I guess we're still kind of in the pandemic, but like that initial fear has kind of passed, I feel. So there's actually more postings than there are optometrists to fill the positions. And I mean, I don't know that about like Edmonton, Alberta-ish kind of, but I'm not sure if that's true of other provinces, but in Alberta, for sure, I know that a lot of people are looking for an optometrist and they're not able to find one because there's just not enough coming back to the province, I guess. So it's true, like that just reiterates, it's definitely not saturated. And then we'll just kind of wrap it up. This is really our last slide. It's just talking about some of the highs and lows, I guess, of practicing as an optometrist. These are just some of the photos that I've taken since I started working. This photo of, I'm not going to explain them all. I just really like this one with, you can't see what I'm pointing at, but I like the one with a little heart at the blood vessels of the nerve. I just thought it was cute, so I took a photo. But we'll talk about what is the toughest part of your job. Do you want to go first or I'll go first? Okay, so what I think the toughest part of the job is I guess submitting or kind of understanding that concept of like, you don't have to know everything right away. For me at least, because I'm like my first year-ish out of school, and oftentimes I'll like see stuff and want to be able to diagnose it and treat it and like talk about everything about it. And like sometimes it's just not the case. And especially like I kind of was a very academic person going all through school. And I always want to know the answer for everything, but sometimes you just don't know the answer. And I feel like that was a hard conclusion or like realization to come to. But it's okay if you don't know the answer, as long as you know how to make someone feel better, which for the most part I do. I'm still doing a good job. It's just important to remind yourself that you're doing a good job.
And then one of the, I would say, and you guys asked toughest, memorable, and craziest, and I'll give you my toughest story. I saw a 7-year-old patient come in who had a sudden onset of where his eye turned in, and I did some checking of a few tests, and I thought that this might be a potential tumor in the brain that's caused it. So I sent him to the ER in an emergency visit in which they did all the scanning. And I then got the information that the child was diagnosed with a brain tumor and was told that he has now about 7 to 9 months to live. Having to have that conversation with mom and dad is not the easiest thing. And that will probably forever be one of the toughest moments that I ever had in my career, was talking about that with parents who came in thinking their child has an eye problem, yet you found something significantly more life, obviously threatening. Those conversations are not easy. And sometimes you have to have tough conversations, like taking a patient's driver's license away. And those are not easy either. Those are the parts where I would say is the challenging part, because you feel for them as a human. Your memorable experience.
And then I'll say what my most memorable experience with a patient, I guess, so far. It was the first time that I gave glasses to like a child. She was, I think, like 2.5, 3 years old, something like that. And she had a really high prescription. And then I prescribed her glasses. And I actually saw her when she came in to pick up the glasses. She was just like the sweetest little kid and super talkative. And she put the glasses on and she immediately goes, "Oh my gosh, I can see everything." And she just was smiling like ear to ear, and she looked so cute with her glasses on. And I feel like that's is just a good reminder of like why you do what you do. It was really sweet.
And I guess we'll kind of, we'll wrap it up here and give you guys a chance to ask your most kind of urgent questions that people might have, if there's any, because we don't want to take up too much of your guys' time, and let you guys kind of ask your questions, and we'll answer anything that we didn't answer so far in the presentation. So any urgent questions you guys might have, please, by all means, shout them out there. Is anything else on that?
Nope. The rest of our presentation, or the last slides, I guess, that we have is just our contact information. So again, you guys are free to ask your questions now. There's no time restrictions for me or Shaminder. We're free to sit here as long as you need. But if you do want to send us like an email, my email is on the left, obviously. Shaminder's is on the right. And you guys can reach out to us there. And then my last thing was just like a little plug for Shaminder, because he runs an Instagram account. So if anyone wants to follow and learn more about optometry in like a very fun, engaging way, that's where you can follow him, @DapperEyeDoc.
Yeah, can you follow? Of course, you can also reach out to me on that platform as well too, if that's more comfortable for you. I'm more than happy to chat about that. It's anything you guys need.
Okay. Any questions?
So we'll give it back to you to.
I hope we're connected. Travis,
She just closed it there.
okay.
My follower count is not going up yet, guys. Hurry up. That's right.
That's a good question. I took mine in my fall, like I said, December of my 3rd year, which was a little too late for applying to Waterloo. So I feel like my ideal one would have been the summer between my 2nd and 3rd year. But I don't know. I feel like, Lucy, maybe you know a better answer to that.
I'll say this much. I think research the schools you want to apply to. They're going to tell you what their deadlines are. There's select schools that have all schools have a harsh deadline. Waterloo is a little different, in which their deadline from our time was December 1st of the fall of that upcoming year, and you had to have your OAT application submitted by that time. I personally think, for me personally, if you're doing a 4-year degree, I think doing the OAT between the summer of your 3rd and 4th year, then that way you can use that OAT and apply to whatever school you want to, is the best way of doing it.
Oh, I think I just told everyone the wrong information.
What did you say?
I said between my 2nd and 3rd
She
year,
meant
right?
3rd and
I
4th.
meant 3rd and 4th, and I took the OAT in December of my 4th year, not my 3rd year.
Yeah, okay. That makes
So December of my 3rd year would have been like such great time. I would have had like plenty of time to do whatever I wanted.
Again, every school is different. Most of the American schools are on a rolling system, which means that they open their application process on whatever day their website says, and they start accepting students right away. So the longer you wait, the less seats they have left, and the more higher chance you have to end up on their waiting list. So the earlier you apply, the better chance you give yourself to get accepted or on a wait list, and then get re-accepted if that's the case. The Waterloo is the only one that they don't do a rolling admission. They do kind of a harsh admission. I will say that I didn't take my OAT until January 28th of my 4th year. And the only issue that comes up with that is, of course, the rolling admission. But on top of that, if you didn't get a good enough score, you don't have time to take it another time and still apply to that same cycle. So if you take it in summer and you're not satisfied with your score, you can then do it again in, September or October, and then you use a second admission to your score. So it gives you a little more flexibility. But that doesn't mean if you take it late, it's not too bad. I went to 3 interviews and got accepted to all 3 schools, and I applied. I finished doing my OAT on January 28th. So it's not that it's impossible. Just do yourself a favor and give yourself the best chance.
Sorry, guys, for messing up my timeline.
Speaking of the OAT as well with physics, I watched some guy's videos on. I paid $50 for this guy's video. I don't know if that's still a thing or not. You guys know what I'm talking about? Chad, there you go. Chad's videos. Chad's video was the greatest $50 I've ever invested in my entire life for studying. My God, that guy's a genius. And he made it so easy. Physics, chemistry. I didn't really do biology. And I think he even admits, he's like, my biology's all right. Like, it's not that great. So you can look at it if you want. But he says chemistry and physics knocks it out of the park. Highly recommend it. Hopefully it's still $50. I hope it's not outrageous now. But it is the same. You could technically, for some schools, including ICO, you can actually apply without finishing your degree. When you look at their stats, like 94% of students that get accepted did have a degree. So it's, if you're applying before you finish your degree and you're doing the preliminary stuff only, just expect that your interview has to be really beefy. Your application has to be really heavy with really good quality stuff for them to consider you. Otherwise, they almost always have a degree at that time. But yes, you can do. Technically, my degree was a 3-year degree at U of M. I just didn't have a very good start in first year, so I had to stretch my degree out to 4 years.
But I had a friend who did that actually, and they like put you through this, like, I don't know, it's like a weird special, she did all the same stuff as we did, but by the end of it, she ended up with both her like bachelor's in science, but they like called it like something optometrical.
Vision science.
Vision something, yeah. They did.
Yeah. Pull up, man, or is it, I think, sorry, just pull up. Yeah, just totally just drive up and say, I'm here to shadow today.
No, don't do that.
Don't do that. But there's one word that I've said 100 times. If someone, Lucy, do you know what that word is?
Network.
Networking. Network. But to be honest, it is kind of just pulling up and asking an optometrist. Shoot them an email, call them, call a random optometrist, send an email to a random optometrist. Everyone is a little bit afraid, and I get it, but I promise you, more than likely, they will be more than happy to have you come and shadow. They'll be more than happy to assist you in your journey to what I think is the best career in the world. So yeah, just don't be shy. The worst thing that they can say is no, I don't have time, or no, unfortunately, it's not going to work out. And what harm did that do to you? Nothing.
Don't let it discourage you. I actually had 2 optometrists tell me no when I asked them if I could shadow, and I was like so butthurt about it because I was like, why would you say no? But you'll find someone who will say yes. You just have to ask a few people. And I know Shaminder's open to it. He's done it in the past. I'm open to it. I've done it in the past. So just ask. It really is that simple. Don't pull up and be like, can I shadow right now, please? Don't do that. But like, ask them ahead of time, and I'm sure most people will say yes.
There you go.
That was a great quote.
Or we talk too much, you're like, yeah, I'm over this. Like, get these guys off our screen. Which I will never be offended because I do that work all the time. So
Shaminder's a talker.
Yeah, sorry, just had a question for the Dapper Eye Doc. As a first year clinic, everyone that I've shadowed has kind of almost inherited or become a business partner to a clinic. And so some suggestions I've received going through school is to take some business courses as well as sciences, so that I'm adequately prepared for when leaving school in the future, being ready for that. Is there any suggestions you would have in starting your own clinic or building up that base clientele out of the first year?
yeah, great question. Do you see how I answered that question after you said that? That's a great question. So, you know, to be transparent, I didn't do any business school or any business classes, and optometry school does probably the nowhere better way of saying it, the shittiest job of preparing you for business. There is extra courses you can take outside the curriculum that are elective courses, and I did take an elective course. It's called a private practice one, and it did nothing for me, to be honest. I mean, let me take that back. It gave you kind of a cool experience of how much gets involved into it, but it doesn't prepare you for what actually comes from it. I think you can take business courses to give you kind of a little bit of a boost, but I don't think anything until you really get your feet wet into it is gonna give you like, nothing's gonna prepare you to the point you're like, yeah, I'm ready to roll. Versus going to school as an optometrist, doing the doctor stuff here, that's bread and butter. Like, to me, that's not the hard part. That's it. You do it in your sleep at that point. Because school, you have 4 years to prepare for that one thing. Business is so variable depending what industry you're in, and nothing's going to prepare you to the point where you're ready to go. You're always going to find things you didn't correct, things you did wrong, things you wish you did better, things you're doing now different. And I mean, think about it. If you have someone who did business course 15 years ago and they talk about how the best way to market, that is completely different than it is today, right? So our marketing ways today are completely different than they were 10 to 15 years ago. So business is always going to keep evolving. And yes, don't get discouraged saying don't do business courses, do them, because there's still knowledge in there that you'll get that I don't have and that I wish I probably did. And sometimes I wonder if I should do an MBA. But if you have time to do business courses, by all means, if that's something you think you might be doing in the future, then there's no harm in it. Every knowledge is a valuable knowledge. Every experience gives you something that you either knew you wanted or knew you didn't want. So I'd say 100%.
I agree. I feel like there's no harm in doing that.
Minus your time.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
I feel like you guys probably have a really good, like more recent, since you just finished doing it versus ours was like, mine was a while ago. I feel like I don't fully remember, but I do know that in the things that I thought that I was going to do really well, like for example, like through reading comprehension, I was like, oh, that's no problem. Like I'm going to kill that section without even preparing. And then I took it and I think it was my worst section. And I was like, how did this happen? But overall, the exam I felt was very fair. Like, I don't think that it was like outrageously difficult where I was like, oh my God, like I really wasn't prepared for that. But it also wasn't like the easiest test I've ever taken in my life. I feel like the Kaplan course, I don't know if there's any other courses that like prepare you for the OIT, because that's really the only one that I've heard of, but that did a really good job. Like I felt like after going through that course, I was prepared enough to take the OIT and get a score that I was like hoping for.
I can echo everything she says. I just say that it's a long day. I mean, the exam starts like 8 a.m. or 7 a.m. You're going to be in there for about 6 hours. So I just say be ready for the endurance of it. I didn't do the smart thing and I studied till 2:30 in the morning the night before the exam. I wrote at 8 a.m. and then after I finished my exam, I had a lab at 2:30 p.m. that I had to run to university to do. And let me say, I hated myself that day. And I had a midterm the next day after that. So I told you, don't wait till January your fourth year to write your OAT. You really can shoot yourself in the foot. But again, it still happens. I'm still here today. So with that being said, it's a different test, but I agree it's fair. And at the end of the day, the reading comprehension is probably the part that you can't prepare for the best, because it's just not, it's not science in which you need to know facts and formulas that you can study for. It's just something you kind of have to practice a bit, and that's just not something most students who apply to optometry school major in. So that's what I can say. Exactly.
I think there's like a certain period of time that they want you to write the OAT in, like between your OAT and your application. But I don't think that that is going to be a problem. But I also don't remember what that period, maybe you guys know better.
I would say just go look on the school website, and if it's not listed on there, just call their admissions department and ask, hey, what is the oldest that my OAT score can be? Because there is for sure something like that. If I don't think I can take my OAT score now that I wrote X amount of years ago and use it for an application today. Like there is a minimum time frame between apps. So just make sure of that. If that's not a problem, then I don't see a reason why not.
Yeah.
If you're like, I just want to do one round of it to get it out of the way, and yeah, sure, it costs you some dollars and some time, but sure, by all means, go ahead and do it. But if you get a good score on it and then you can't use it for your application, that's gonna suck. But at the same time,
double check that before you do it.
I would say that's
Otherwise,
what
there's
they
no
say,
problem in
yeah.
doing that. I volunteered at an old folks home. I put that on my application. I talked about it a lot because like I had some really like different experiences that kind of related to healthcare where I'm not like really doing healthcare. Honestly, I was just there and I was just speaking to people, but it just gives you like good experience into like different interactions that you can talk about during your interview. And I felt like it really enriched me as like a human. So it was a good experience to have. But like if you have volunteering experience anywhere, and especially if it's like anywhere in the realm of healthcare, that would be a good one to like throw in there and talk about for sure.
Yeah, obviously volunteering for optometrists and that stuff is all, I think that's common sense that that's going to be a good thing to put on there. But to be honest, my application was filled with other stuff. So for example, hey, I was a part of the pre-optometry club. That's a fantastic extracurricular to put on there. Another thing is be involved with groups of any sort of kind. So I wasn't really involved. I was a part of the science committee at my undergrad. So that was something that I put on there. Tutoring, if you tutor anybody, make sure you put tutoring on there. And then something that I put on there that was very valuable that I used in my interview process was that I was a part of organized sports. I played on organized basketball teams throughout all of undergrad. I put on that I coached, my little nephew. To be honest, I was just assistant coach for my little nephew at the time, my little cousin. But I put on there that I had coaching experience, and you want to okay, so what does that have to do with your application extracurriculars? You're showing leadership skills. You're showing that you can be a part of you can work in as a team skills. You're showing skills of professionalism and also of creative thinking when you're working as a team. And that's some things that you utilize. And when you can say those things in your interview of how you relate your skills from something that's not related to optometry to how you can use it. Like I, for example, said, hey, I was the captain of our basketball team, so I had to make sure everything was going well. And now it's a leadership position. And now being in a profession where I'm going to be involved in a multi-doctor practice, for example, I can be in a position to help with leadership of the practice and the leadership of other groups here, because I would love to be involved with student clubs at your school. That's it. Can I dunk? No. Didn't work out legs enough apparently for that. I'm going to jump right back to networking and mentorship, to be honest. Find someone that you vibe well with and make them your friend and just ask questions. It's not really much more of a deep answer than that. I don't know if you had anything else to add to that, Jazz, but that's really it. We bounce ideas off each other, so we have each other for that. But there's no real textbook or guidelines that's gonna make you the perfect business owner. There's just experiences you have to live through. I like to listen to podcasts about self-improvement, but again, like it's all your own stuff. There's no perfect way to do it. So
And there's also different, like we talked about before, like different avenues that you can take. Like Shaminder has a private practice versus I do a side by side. And like Shaminder is a lot more like hands-on, like he has his own employees, he takes care of everything. Versus for me, I feel like I found a really good balance where like I don't have to like stress honestly as much as he does about like the business side of things, but like this is my own business and I like I'm my own boss. So like I just have to handle myself, which I can do fine.
And me, I also am employed by her as well too. So
you can find like different avenues. Like say you want to kind of be your own boss, but you maybe don't want to have like all that responsibility. Look for a side-by-side opportunity. Like you could find something like that too. Of course.
Thank you for having us. We really appreciate you guys' time, and we hope you gain some valuable information from it.
Yeah, we hope we didn't just like blabber on. Sometimes I like catch myself talking and I'm like, is this even getting to like answer the question that I was supposed to answer? But I hope it was helpful in some sort of way.
Take care. Best of luck with everything, everybody.
Yeah, good luck, you guys.
Thank you.